What's going on, wrestling fans? It is I, Steve Fault, and welcome to 10 Count. On today's edition, I'm talking to the greatest bad guy in the entire world. It's Muhammad Hassan. How are you doing today?
I am good. How are you?
I am doing great, and today is an honor and a privilege because there are some wrestling characters who are bad guys, but then there are guys that you will never, ever forget for their run in the WWE or anywhere else, and you certainly have that achievement. Just like Sergeant Slaughter, I think you and him are connected at the hip with the controversy surrounding your characters and probably the life-threatening moments that happened to you. But before we get into all of that, how did someone even pitch the character Muhammad Hassan to you?
It wasn't Muhammad Hassan when it was pitched. From my understanding, it was Vince's idea to bring in an Arab character. Looking through the developmental territory to see if anybody could fit the role. I did not play anything even close to an Arab character. I was playing Mark Magnus, this year's model. I mean, I'm tan. I had a beard. I wore like black leather pants. I was part of the group in OVW Revolution. Jim Cornette and Arn Anderson came to me one day just talking about this idea of playing an Arab character and how I felt about it. You don't say no to an opportunity like that. It was all kind of very sketched out, but not like we didn't have the idea of what the character was going to be for a very long time. So they bring in Sean. Sean and I start working together a little bit in OVW. My character goes off of TV. Everything in OVW is kayfabe. Like they don't like if I'm going to disappear, there's a reason why I'm going to disappear. And then I go away for maybe 2 months. And then I come back kind of reborn as this Hassan character and then enter Sean into the picture. It wasn't until we got traveling on the road with the WWE and doing dark matches and just trying different things out with the crowd that we really kind of figured out the most heat we got was when we told the truth. It was based on our experiences traveling really with Sean and the anger and really just the frustration of I have no patience of having to always wait for Sean to be searched and checked at every airport. It kind of led us towards this idea of a second-class citizen or a third-class citizen versus what we had originally done, which was the evil Arab, just the very gimmicky, the stereotypical caricature of a bad guy. I'm going to raise your oil prices, like things that you can never say today. It developed into more of a nuanced character that really kind of honed in on what was happening in America at the time and really focused more on the injustice. And it was the complaining about the injustice that I think really drew a lot of heat to that character, especially when the complaints were justified, but the character was not. And I think that's when we really found our niche during those dark matches at those house shows to really make Hassan and Daivari what they became.
Now, I love that you brought that up because 100%, people view your character as evil. But in the beginning, when you showed up, say, on WWE TV, you are speaking the truth. You're saying, kind of after 9/11, shit hit the storm for a lot of people because suddenly everyone saw someone who wasn't white. And they're like, oh, that must be a terrorist because of the weird propaganda and how America sometimes reacts to things. And so I love that you brought that up because as a watcher of your character, I'm watching him going, what he's saying he's not lying, but at the same time, people are like, hey, don't you say that about America. It's like, well, sort of true though. And how did you feel about that? Because in movies or in television, the idea is the bad guy doesn't see themselves as bad. They're just speaking how they feel. And so with your character out and about, going around saying the things you were saying, was your life constantly threatened by just crazy people?
No, not constantly. People even, of course, but I feel like people in the United States kind of started to understand wrestling at that time and started to understand. I mean, you see me, you could inevitably see me walking around the airport with, a bunch of the guys heading to a show. We're not fighting in the middle of the airport. Like, I think they understood that it was a character and it is a show more so than they would have 30, 40 years ago, like with Sergeant Slaughter. But America has typically always been a very xenophobic nation. I mean, they've had fear of outsiders going back to when my grandparents came here, my great-grandparents who were from Sicily. So Arab became that new outsider. Even though, and as my character pointed out, they were insiders. They had been here for a long time helping build this country. And a lot of them, I mean, look at Sean. Sean's one of the most American people that I've ever met. You know, Sean is he was at the time your stereotypical American teenager, because Sean was really young. Like, he might have been in early 20s. And yet we would go places and he was treated like he, you know, was going to blow a plane up. And it was very easy to draw on that. But here, I never really felt threatened. I know that there were letters, and I know people were very angry about the character, and some of the things we did, especially later on in the gimmick, people got more angry about. The one time that I felt physically threatened, and believe me, you don't, when you travel with a bunch of WWE wrestlers, you don't really feel physically threatened by anybody. They're very large, tough men. But I think we were in Australia, and we were approached by a group of Muslim men in Australia, and they were offended by the gimmick, and their anger towards us was because they knew it was a phony portrayal. Whereas where I find now, I have contact with a lot of fans. I'm not the most accessible person in the world. I just, you know, between work, kids, a new life, new career. Yeah. But a lot of the people who email me or message me now are Arab Americans, Indian Americans, who loved that the character represented someone who looked like them. And I think it's much more appreciated now as a character, not a real person, who represented them and how they felt, or how their parents may have felt at the time, since it was a while ago. It was almost 20 years ago. But at that time, they were offended because they knew it was phony, and they knew that I was pretending to be Arab. Sean's Persian, and we were pretending to be these Arab Americans when we really weren't. And I remember one of them had something to say about the fact that we were drinking beers out at the bar, and it did get heated. But we were out with, and you know, when you go to foreign countries, you travel usually with a pretty large group of wrestlers, and it didn't go very far, but it could have. And that to me is the time that I felt most threatened, and it wasn't by anybody in America. It was by someone who was legitimately upset that we are misrepresenting their religion and their people. And I can understand that. That's where the character ended up. And ultimately, that's why that character would never survive today. You couldn't get away with that shit today. Like, are you kidding me? But it had to end where it ended. People always ask, like, what if? And my response is, what if would have been another 6 months to a year? Like, it would not have lasted much. The world was changing rapidly then, in our ideals and our sensitivity towards things that we once perceived as a joke, or not necessarily in good fun, but okay to portray, changed. So I don't think that character would have survived much longer in this country or on TV or anywhere.
Interesting you say that because of the history you had, because like Iron Sheik, you know, or like Nikolai Volkov or Sergeant Slaughter, like these characters are portraying certain individuals that they actually are not. Chief Jay Strumbrone was not a Native American. You know, so like there's always these weird connotations with wrestlers, because on TV, if you see someone playing, say, a terrorist character, they're not actually a terrorist in real life. As in, you're experiencing Davari and you traveling around the world, experiencing this weird stigma. It's like, you know, I'm playing a character on television, but yet wrestling is this weird gray area of like, well, it's pretend, but it's real. It's too real, but it's too fake. Like, it's so confusing to me sometimes. So your experience obviously was a little bit of both.
And that followed me around. I mean, obviously I took a very different career path, but I was up for a job in a school district local in my area, pretty big school district. And I had interviewed for 2 months, and I had been offered the position. And ultimately the Board of Education there, because I portrayed an Arab, wouldn't approve my appointment. So I didn't get the job, even though I interviewed. The administrative team picked me, the community group picked me, the student group, the teacher group, but I lost out on that job, and that was the reason why. And I've been working in the Fulton City School District, which is just north of Syracuse, for almost over 10 years now. And when I first was appointed principal at the junior high school, which I was for 4 years, there was a doctor of Arab descent from Syracuse City who had a loose connection to the superintendent in the district, who called the superintendent criticizing the fact that because there was a newspaper article about it, so it was public. You know, the former wrestler is now a principal, and wanted me to call him and apologize for playing an Arab character. And I was approached, and my superintendent never made me do it, but I was like, I not apologizing. I was 24 years old playing a character on television. Like, in my mind, like you said, there was a huge long history of people playing characters that weren't like Tom Hanks and Forrest Gump, like things like that. I'm not going to call some guy and apologize. And really, I was kind of horrified that this was a doctor. Like, what if his patients found out that he believed that wrestling was real? Like, it was like in his mind, he thought that I was really pretending to be an Arab and doing these things. So and that's just a couple examples, but it really has followed me around since that stint in the WWE, because people do have a hard time separating what is sports entertainment and what is sports. It was as if I pretended to be an Arab, tricked Vince McMahon, and got on the show and did this. I think that's how some people kind of viewed it, but obviously, we know now. I mean, I'm Sicilian. I'm 100% Italian. It was a character that I played, that I studied to play, that I worked with WWE to really fine tune, and it's a character that I think I played pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. It's like someone playing Hitler in a movie. You think they're actually a Nazi or Hitler? Like, right, I've always been confused by that with professional wrestling, where say La Resistance were French sympathizers because we were dealing with the aftermath of 9/11, but France wouldn't help America, so WWE created a character, and suddenly everyone's mad at them, thinking they actually are these people who believe these things. Like, you think the Undertaker is actually a dead person? Burying them alive? Like, no.
Well, and the fans want to believe it, and that's what you want.
Of course,
your disbelief, but when it trickles out into the outside world, and people believe it like it's actual fact, I think that's kind of where Muhammad Hassan, the character, ran into some issues.
Yeah, like Kane is the mayor of Knoxville County. Do they think he actually burned like all those things he did? No, that's a character he's portraying on television. But man, it's interesting because your character has so many things, and it's such a quick amount of time. Like WrestleMania 21, you're involved with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania. That's pretty much like his show that he created. What was that experience like? Because obviously every young talent wants to be in the ring and showcase somewhere, but you're being showcased with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania.
It was I remember a lot of pressure. I was still pretty new. It's a huge spot. I'm in there with Eugene, who Nick Dinsmore was one of my trainers in OVW, which I felt really comfortable with. And it was actually an honor to be able to share the ring with him as well. Hulk was great. Like, he was very welcoming, very cool. They were doing Hogan Knows Best at the time. And funny story, I can't remember who it was, but I had wrestled for 5 years. I didn't have a long career, WWE for like a year and a half. And somebody was like, "Hey, I know you. You were on Hogan Knows Best." Yeah, I guess I was. I had like 30 seconds on it, and they remembered it. But it was a really great experience to be able to have that big moment, to be able to go in there and feel that energy, and then to have Hulk Hogan come out. I'll tell you what, though, having Hogan come out at Madison Square Garden was probably, which was right before the setup, probably one of the loudest and most energetic and amazing experiences that I've ever had. WrestleMania is WrestleMania, and it was just a huge event the entire week. I remember, my father and my sister came up. I was so drained emotionally and physically that I really do think I spent like 75% of it in my hotel room. Like, it was just an amazing, awesome thing to be a part of. And then that Madison Square Garden match, when we were beating up Shawn Michaels and Hogan came out and the roof just blew off the place. It felt like I was lifting off of the mat, just the energy, because I don't think at that time you could hide it. Nobody knew he was coming. So being able to work with Hulk Hogan, and then we worked with him in Boston as well, was just a great experience, because he was someone that I watched. I mean, I remember WrestleMania 3. I was 8 years old. I walked down to my buddy's house and we watched WrestleMania 3. And just to be able to be in there with him was really cool. And he was really great about the whole thing.
Outstanding. Yeah. I feel like he's one of those, like, the Americana characters that people still today, when anyone does an impersonation of a wrestler, they do a Hulk Hogan impression, even if they don't even know what they're doing, because it's become such an iconic moment with professional wrestling. So, but when you were doing, say, like, media for WWE events, because now, like, say I do interviews with WWE wrestlers promoting, oh, you're coming to Boston, or you're going to Toronto, or wherever you're going. Did you do that? And were people under the impression that you were the character you were portraying, or they were just interviewing you as who you are?
I'm sorry, when I was doing what, I was trying to adjust the lighting here.
Oh no! So when you're doing media for, say, wrestling, like it's changed completely now, where it's very open to allow wrestlers to get interviews with websites or NBC or CBS or whoever. But back in the day, say in 2005, are you doing the media rounds and interviews, and are people constantly like asking you, like, "Are you really this person?" Or are they asking you just like, "Oh, you're coming to town? Are you excited?"
I didn't really do a lot of media.
No.
I really didn't. With my character, we wanted it to be as realistic as possible. Okay. So I didn't do a lot of media. I remember doing one press conference. I think it was in Buffalo with JBL and Vince. It was cool. That was the time I got to fly on Vince's private jet. And I would do it in full Muhammad Hassan gimmick. So if that's the only one that I can recall. I may have done some more, but it was never as me. It was always as the character. And that even when I walked through the airports, we would dress with our suits. We would dress, again, full gimmick. Very rarely were we out. I mean, obviously we were going to the gym or going to get a bite to eat. We wouldn't be, but anytime we were formally traveling for the WWE, especially when we were traveling with all of the wrestlers, like when you go to a different country or certain shows, always full gimmick, Sean and I.
What was your relationship like with Vince McMahon? Because I've noticed over the years with certain characters, he grabs onto you and he's invested into you, like Goldust, Mankind, Kane, Undertaker. I assume he's involved with your character heavily.
He was. It was his idea, and he was really the driving force behind helping us shape and mold the character, and then giving that character a push. Obviously, he was always good to me. I never had a bad experience with him. In spite of all the things in recent events, I personally, in the short time I was there, I never had a bad experience with him. I always found him pretty easy to approach, to talk to, and helpful with feedback. So that was my experience with Vince. But like I said, I was only there for a brief amount of time.
Right. And then at one point you're undefeated too, and you fight John Cena, who was at the time the mega star, the moneymaker. Again, what is that like going into this? Because you lose the match, you're no longer undefeated, but you're still in the ring showcase with John Cena very early in this run of Muhammad Hassan. Is there a discussion at any point that you're going to be possibly become WWE champion around this time?
Not with me. It was a little bit later. I had worked with John at OVW, so I had spent a lot of time with him. I would go in and train after they would do their WWE. Before, and I first started there, I didn't have a contract. I came in and I was doing their Saturday class and paying money to do it every week.
Wow.
And so they would bring a couple of us in. I believe it was Tuesday nights, Monday nights, with like John Cena, Shelton Benjamin, some of their talent, their WWE talent, and they would basically use us as practice dummies. And I'd spent some time with John outside of the ring, hanging out around Louisville. Like we knew each other pretty well. And I always knew he was going to be what he was. I mean, he was like probably the most talented on the mic that I had seen in my time there. You tell him cut a promo about eating a turkey sandwich for your wrestling match against, classy Freddie Blassie. And he would just go and cut an amazing promo about it. And everybody would be dying. It was fun to watch. We would do promo practice. We all sit around and kind of watch. But being in the ring with them, that's the match now that I was a teacher and then an assistant principal and a principal and now director of human resources. So all the kids know, and, it's been a great experience for me. It kind of gives me a little bit of like some props, when I walk through the schools and their parents watch me. None of them did, but that's the match that everybody always seems to find on YouTube. And that was the match where we had like 9 minutes, I think 10 minutes. And I'm losing because I'm leaving. I'm going to Smackdown. So I am putting the, top babyface over and leaving basically the company, so to speak, because they were two separate shows. And we got our time cut to like 5 minutes. So like, it was like 3 minutes of shine for John where he's on top beating me. And then I cut him down and I get a heat for like a minute and they're like, go home. And so everybody watches that match. Like, you got your ass kicked by John Cena. Because it was really amazing. That was like a 75% John Cena match. There wasn't, and I had been undefeated up until that time, and he came in and he went over strong. But it's like, you get your ass beat by John Cena too. I guess my comeback now. Like, come on, man. Like, at least I hung with him for a few minutes, but it was cool. And being on the mic with him before that match, or maybe it was at a different time, but it was cool to go back and forth on the mic. Not much of that was scripted. In fact, none of it was scripted for me. I don't think John ever was scripted. So that was cool to be able to sit there and go toe to toe on the mic with him for a little bit after watching him and idolizing him and his ability to cut promos for so long. And then being in the ring with him, the one thing I tell everybody about John Cena is John Cena, his hands are like frying pans.
Yes.
I know he's got gigantic hands, and John doesn't leave anything to chance. Everybody always talked about wrestling being fake. It's like, listen, you don't want to hurt somebody. That's the last thing you want, is to be known as someone who hurt someone, but you also don't want to be known as that guy that threw a punch and was off by 3 inches. So you want to make him pretty snug. And I remember every time he punched me, I'm pretty sure I blacked out for a second because his hands are just so gigantic. He wasn't trying to hurt me, but it's like getting hit in the head with a frying pan. I mean, so it was a fun match, but I just remember being glad I made it out alive. And that's just John. That's how he wrestles. He's very intense, and he became a very solid, very great wrestler. So I'm really grateful I had that experience with him in the ring after spending so much time with him when I was first starting in OVW. Him, Nick Dinsmore, like I was very fortunate to be able to come full circle with some of these guys who had taught me so much.
I'm so happy that you said all that about John Cena's hands too, because I met him once. I was at a press conference and he like shook my hand, and I swear my hand just disappeared I was like, where'd my hand go? And one of his fingers was like 3 fingers. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, where did my hand just go? And his fingers are huge. And you're talking about getting punched in the face by accident, of course. You're getting snug. Man, eating those punches by John Cena. Because for a long time, for at least 2005, people were critiquing John Cena for calling him the 5 moves of doom and things like that. But he is on the Mount Rushmore of the WWE. So if you want to ever argue that point, well, look at the money that was made while he was on top. So
he made what he had work better than pretty much anybody else. He found a way to make it work. He found a way to be entertaining no matter what he was doing. Yeah, I would agree. He is definitely up there.
Yeah, like we talk about Hogan, you got John Cena, and then the rest you can add whoever you want. You swipe out Ric Flair to Shawn Michaels to Bret Hart to Undertaker, but Hogan and Cena, who you got to work with as well, which is just incredible because that not everyone gets that opportunity like yourself. But you mentioned it. You go from Raw, which is on USA, to SmackDown, which is on UPN. Now, before we get into anything else, do you feel like that move from USA to UPN Network was the beginning? But also you alluded earlier to your character wouldn't have lasted another 6 months no matter what. So no matter what happened, do you believe your character would have eventually just fizzled out? Because that's a lot of heat to keep going.
I felt like going to SmackDown was the beginning. I didn't feel good about it. SmackDown was network, Raw was cable. A lot of what we were doing was pretty edgy, so I was a little nervous that we wouldn't be able to get away with as much. Would I have gotten canceled if I was on Raw for doing that segment with The Undertaker after the London bombing? Probably. I think it still would have happened. But I felt like going to SmackDown for me, just after being so comfortable on Raw and finally feeling comfortable in the locker room, working with the guys, working with that live setup, that live format, I thought that it was kind of the beginning of the end. It did kind of feel like that. I know it wasn't immediate, but I don't think either way, as Muhammad Hassan was and starting to be portrayed. I mean, it became a very fanatical character where we weren't as much relying on the fact that it evolved from being the second-class citizens and being mistreated to now being a religious fanatic. And we brought a lot more elements of radical Islam into that character. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it would have crashed. It sizzled. It got really hot, really fast. And I think ultimately it would have just completely crashed because not is it hard to maintain that heat, but to maintain that kind of heat. Would that character have evolved into something else? Maybe, but at the time, after that controversy, I had no chance of coming back on TV. That was kind of the beginning of the end for characters like that in the WWE. Sean Devari always says to him that was the end of the Attitude Era. That was when WWE started to morph into a more family-friendly version. And I think a lot of it had to do with the reaction that my character got after the London bombing, and the fact that sponsors really exhibited power over the WWE because there was threats to pull their sponsorship if they didn't pull the character. And I don't know what was said about after I was pulled. I don't know who said what. I mean, controversy is controversy, but ultimately it came down to money. And if they're pulling their sponsorship from WWE programming, WWE had to make a decision. And I think that they decided that character just couldn't survive on TV, and at least in the way that it was any longer.
Right. In my brain, like I don't work there and I didn't run creative or anything, but in my brain, after the character has a controversial moment after the London bombings, was there ever a discussion to be like, maybe we should just like Americanize him suddenly, be like, oh, he realized what he was saying was wrong and he loves America. Like Sergeant Slaughter going from Mr. America, Iraqi sympathizer, to Mr. America. Like, were ever discussions to realize, like, we can flip this and realize he made a mistake as a character versus this character's dead in the water, we can't use this anymore?
A little bit. I remember Hunter had said something about just having me come out and be Mark Capani and just kind of be like, I made the whole thing up. You know, there wasn't a lot of discussion, and that character needed to be off of television for a certain amount of time. But ultimately, I mean, it was so impactful, so quick. You know, the genuine heat that it generated. I think it would have been difficult for me to come back as something else and have success. And I think that they knew that. So, I mean, I was on contract for probably about a year just waiting to hear something. And eventually I didn't, and I was released. So there was discussion, but I think it would have been a challenge for my character to come back in any other way and be believable and be over, you know, to be popular in any way like it was before.
Right. And now I've listened to Bruce Pritchard on his podcast talk about your character in this moment. And Conrad Thompson, the other host, asked, like, well, the London bombings, say, happen on like a Wednesday. You tape SmackDown on a Tuesday. It's going to air later in the week. And it's a long segment, but at the same time, if you have time to edit out a controversial segment involving your character on an Undertaker, which seems to be, you know, a terrorist act after the bombings, do you understand or know why they didn't try to edit? Bruce Pritchard says it was just, they couldn't because it was just too long. But in reality, they could if they wanted to.
I don't know how they would have done that. It was a pretty long segment. I never had a conversation with anybody about why they did it. I know they ran a crawler at the bottom of it, just kind of, you know, a warning kind of thing. I don't know how they would have done it. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe because it was a lot of heat heading into that match with Undertaker. Maybe they didn't think it would have the reaction. And really, at that time, I don't think there had been a lot of WWE segments that received that kind of reaction. I mean, I remember realizing how big it was when I saw it in Time Magazine. You know, it even made the local paper in Syracuse, and it wasn't like, hey, this guy's from Syracuse. It was like, hey, look at what happened. So I don't think they anticipated that sort of reaction. I don't think they anticipated the kind of the fallout afterwards. WWE has done a lot of controversial things over the years, and there was nothing quite like this. And obviously, because of the severity and the reality of the London bombing, it wasn't just racy. It was in poor taste to kind of not only portray an Islamic citizen like that of the United States, but also to kind of caricaturize that sort of fanaticism that caused the deaths of those people in London.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's been shows, say, who have like school shooting episodes, and then the week before that, a real actual school shooting happens, and they've pulled those episodes. They've said, like, we're not going to air this week. This is a bad idea. This is going to look really bad, and we don't want to, obviously, people die. We don't want to offend the families of the people who have passed. WWE, I feel like for a long time, at least Vince McMahon loved the idea of controversy, and anyone talking about us is good. But obviously, it wasn't good for you and your character. And you mentioned a whole year, so you're being paid for a whole year to sit at home. And while they think of ideas for you, or you're pitching things, they're pitching things to you. Like, what is the process of you sitting at home for a year?
I think it was just to have that everything kind of die down. It had me as a maybe. I mean, I wasn't making the money I was making when I was wrestling. I mean, you get paid per show. You know, I was making the minimum of my contract. I think it was about a year. I had pitched a few things. Nothing was really pitched to me. You know, not that I can remember. It was 20 years ago now, so my memory is a little fuzzy. But not that I can recall. I think I kind of had this understanding that my time in WWE was probably coming to an end. And I wasn't too upset about that at the time. I think being on the road, the travel, really just the letdown of, you know, spending so much time and energy in OVW, really training and working and then getting my chance. And not only did I get my chance, I feel like I did a good job. Like, I feel like if I wasn't very good at playing that character, I probably wouldn't have been in the position I was in. I made that character believable enough to where it was, like I said, it wasn't really perceived as an Italian, you know, playing a character at the time. But I think it was heartbreak, and I don't think I was ready to go back. And I think I wanted to do something else. So I didn't really push too hard. I mean, I could have went to different promotions. I didn't even do any autograph signings back then. Like I I just kind of wanted to move on and kind of put it behind me for a while. And that's how I really was for probably 15 years.
Well, I can understand because, again, here we are. We're rolling up on the 19th anniversary of your character being eliminated on Great American Bash 2005 from Undertaker with the last ride through the stage, killing off your character. And here we are 19 years later, still talking about the impact of your character being so influential at the time. And even in today's world, I think, like you bring it up, your run was maybe a little bit after that, but yet you were one of the most memorable characters of all time. People have had 5 years, 10-year runs that were like, who's that? But yet here we are now, next year with the 20-year anniversary. So the discussion of eliminating your character at Great American Bash, are you told beforehand? Because SmackDown airs and then the controversy happens. There's someone go, hey, so we're going to powerbomb you through the stage and it's going to probably hurt a lot, but then we'll figure something out. Like, is there, what happens? When do you find out they're going to do that to your character?
I think the week before, I mean, there was a lot of discussion about how we were going to publicly kind of fight this.
Okay.
The fact that they were going to be, the network wouldn't allow us on TV. I mean, that was a pay-per-view. I wasn't allowed on Smackdown at that point after the incident. It ultimately, it didn't seem like a battle that we were going to win. Like I said, once you start talking big money, it seemed like it would be easier to kind of just kind of 86 the plans that we had. And I was told, I knew because I had talked to Johnny Ace, who was head of talent relations at the time, told him that I like, what do you think is going to happen? What's the plan? And told him that I was purchasing a house in Syracuse, and he said, don't buy the house. And I remember that's what I kind of knew. Okay, so I'm going away for a while, and I don't know if I'm coming back.
Wow, man. Again, you're talking about heartbreak and moments of you think everything's going the right way, and then suddenly you want to buy this house, and they're like, don't do that. Like that's got to be a kick in the, it's got to hurt because you put in the work. Even before Muhammad Hassan, you were putting in work, 4 years of training, becoming a professional wrestler, knowing what you're doing, the craft. And then here we are now on top of the world, one bag segment. They try to, and it just ruins that run at least. And then when you were done with the WWE, was there a discussion, at least eternally, or with your family too? Hey, I want to keep doing this, but I got to figure out how to do this.
Because I don't know if I wanted to at the time. It was a huge letdown. It had devastated me for years. It took me a while to really come to terms with the depression that I had been going through. I moved out to Los Angeles. I wanted to try writing. I wanted to try acting. I wanted to try some different things. I did some production out there, worked on some screenplays. Ultimately, I didn't have a ton of success, and I don't think I was the most healthy individual while I was out there. And I think I could look back on it now and realize I was depressed and really struggling to come to terms with what had happened, even though at the time I didn't feel like I wanted to go back. I think that would have been easy. I think in my mind, WWE was the pinnacle of wrestling world. And if I wasn't going to wrestle in WWE, I wasn't going to try to wrestle anywhere else. And so I was going to move on, try something new. But ultimately, I lived home for a little bit, and then I moved out. And I think my family was also concerned on the toll that it had taken on me, not just wrestling, but more so the loss of wrestling. And the way I handle that, and probably the way I handle a lot of things, is to become really optimistic about the next thing. Like I never really dwell on what I have done. I'm always looking forward to what I'm going to do. I don't spend a whole lot of time dwelling in the past. I don't with wrestling. I don't with any of the decisions that I made. I look at all of them as I'm here because I made those decisions, whether they're right or wrong. I learned from my experiences, and it's kind of helped me be what I would consider, for the most part, a stable individual today, raising 4 kids. I'm responsible for 750 employees in my school district. I learned so much along the way that I never would have had I not had the bad experiences as well. I couldn't imagine the kind of person I would be if it didn't go that way. And if I had great success, I don't think I would be who I am. And I don't think I would have as much value to my family as a person if things didn't end up, if I didn't fail over and over again. I look at my kids now and they fail at something, and I always tell them, if failure is more important than success, you learn a lot more from failing. Anybody can become cocky after, a string of successes, but it's that failure that really teaches you what you need to change and helps you reflect on what you've done and where you're going to go. Those were all things that I learned the hard way along the way, but I am glad that I learned them, and I'm grateful, like I said, for the experience and the opportunity, and I wouldn't change it.
Of course, man. Yeah, I thank you so much for that advice to the world too, because I think everyone believes that once you think you've achieved everything and then it goes away, well, you think it's over. The world's over. I can't ever go forward in life. But obviously you have. And I remember years ago, I don't know where it happened, WWE.com did a segment where like, where are they now? And suddenly you were part of the segment and it was revealed what you were doing now with your life. And now let's explain, what are you doing currently as a business and as an operator and 750 employees?
Well, I started out teaching, and I really love teaching because I love history. And so when I wanted to think of a career to really just start over, not for money, not for, fame, those were things that I had experienced and I didn't need anymore, but just for something that I enjoyed doing. I became a social studies teacher. Love history, love talking to kids about history. I love working with kids. And from there, I had continued my education with my master's degree and then my certificate of advanced study in educational leadership. I wanted to do something more, have a greater reach. I really enjoyed some of the more business aspects of working in a school district. So I became an assistant principal. I was an assistant principal at the high school for 4 years. They needed a principal at the junior high school. So I was asked if I would be willing to accept that position, and I did. So that was a big decision because it's a lot more responsibility, a lot more time consuming. And like I said, I had, little kids at the time, but I did. And we did a lot of work changing the culture in that building. And I think a lot of it has to do with personal relationships that you build, knowing your staff, knowing what your staff needs, supporting your staff, being able to have critical conversations with your staff, but frame it in a way that doesn't make them feel defeated, but makes them feel hopeful that they can change and motivated to want to change, to win for the team, to look at it as the group. That's what really got me interested. And it was my knack for that I think really, when the director of human resources role opened up, I was interested in expanding even further from staff in a school building to now staff in the district. So as a director of human resources, I'm part of the senior administration. There's 5 of us now, and we each handle different elements of the school district. So obviously mine is personnel, anything legal, contracts, things like that. I mean, even just a lot of day-to-day maintenance, working with staff members, paychecks, insurance. And so my reach now is the 750 employees and the over 3,000 kids we have in the district. And at times they're the kids and their families. And it's a lot different because I really focus more on the adult end and the business end of a school district. But I found it really rewarding because I know if I can do my job well and I could support my staff and my people, they're going to support kids. And so the more they feel supported, the more you're able to really get them to want to win for the team. The more that they feel that you care. I always said, I'll do a favor. I'll do anything for my staff because I know when I ask it, they'll do it for me. And I think that was always true as a principal. And I think that it's true as a director. But I've been enjoying it. We do this thing. We had worked with our PR department on a guy named Alex Richmond, works at our BOCES, which is our consortium where all the school districts kind of work with the BOCES to access resources. And we started this program this year called the Fulton School Champions. And so it's pretty well produced. It's on Facebook. I shared it. I share it on my Facebook page. The district puts it out every month, and the community nominates 3 of our staff members, and then I get to orchestrate this big surprise where we always want to catch them off guard, kind of like Publishers Clearinghouse. And we catch them off guard. We present them with a prize. Like it's like $100 value. Like it's a fairly substantial prize. And then we read their nomination and why they're being recognized. And that's been one of the greatest things. It kind of gets me back into entertainment a little bit. I know it's on a small scale, but some of our segments have reached for us, 17, 19,000 viewers. And we're only a district of 750 staff, and 3,000 students. So this is reaching outside of our school district. But as a director of human resources, which is typically kind of you would think it's a very blah position, this has kind of given us some razzle dazzle, so to speak, some ice. And it's been an amazing experience to be able to catch these people and really acknowledge the great things that they're doing and see their reactions. We love tears. We make the joke like tears are great. If you're going to cry, we'll focus, Alex will zoom in.
Yes.
But it's also kind of brought me back to more of an entertainment side. It's not really scripted. You're working with kids. Like, you have any idea how hard it is to try to get like 50 kindergartners on the same page, and like not to spoil the surprise if we're trying to like have someone sneak in the library and get them there. But it's been kind of a great joining of my past and my current career, and it's been a lot of fun. And we're going to do it next year. But it's wind right now.
Yeah. What's going on? You in a tornado?
Oh God!
Please don't be. Hope not. Please God don't.
But that's what I do now. Not only do I get to do the great entertaining things with that program that we run every month, but I also get to do a lot working with staff, working with different groups of people to just come to resolutions and make sure that everybody, again, feels supported and they can do what's best for kids.
Man, that is amazing to hear. Can you give me an example of one of those surprises? Because that sounds like an amazing time. Like, what is one of the ones that jumps out at you? Is like, oh, we got them good at that time. Zoom in on those tiers.
So one of the ones we did was for our last episode in June. We have this guy. He's retired. He worked in the district for a long period of time. He's 86 years old. He's a door greeter, and he's the kind of guy he knows everybody in the building. Like, we always joke, like, we got to go down there and break people up and make them leave Bernie's desk, because they'll just sit there for hours. And he knows my kids. He'll always ask, like, hey, what's Sammy got going on this weekend? Hey, how do you do? Like, he's just one of the most warmest, most welcoming with students, like students in the junior high. That's where he works. He's for a district greeter, but he works at the junior high building. He basically lets people in, checks, makes sure their IDs, runs them through our system, make sure they're safe to enter the building. Students in the building, they get rewards. Like, if they set a goal and they meet their goal, one of the rewards is you get to spend 10 minutes with Bernie.
Oh man, amazing.
So we got about 150 people after this end of the school day at the junior high. And he works at the downstairs entrance, and there's a big ramp. And we got 150 people to walk out the front with us, students and staff, walk all the way down and line that ramp. And then we called him out, and everybody was cheering for him, and he came out and he was very emotional. And we, the cheering and the recognition for everything that he did, it was personal to me because I enjoy him so much as a human being. But that was one of the more memorable ones, just to see that visual. I mean, you couldn't see past. It was a 150 swarm of people just standing there cheering for this guy who makes such a difference in our lives. That one it stands out because it was one of the last ones we did, but also because it was one of the most personally fulfilling for me. And it was just really cool to have, that level of participation. A lot of times we get a lot of kids. We'll fill a cafeteria, we'll fill an auditorium, and we kind of get the person in there, and then we kind of do a convoluted way to just make them think they're going in there for one reason, and we get them with something else. Yeah. They're all really cool. And like I said, you could check them out on my Facebook page or on the Fulton City School District Facebook page. But it's amazing to have somebody be so moved and touched that their colleagues and the community, parents, local business, appreciate who they are and what they do. And I always read the nomination. And like I said, we spend a lot of time celebrating these people. We did a luncheon at the end of the year. We invited them all to a luncheon and got them all together. So as far as what I do in my school district, that's probably the most rewarding thing. Because like I said, it's about kids. It's about our adults being able to support kids, and it's about recognizing the hard work they do.
Man, you got me. Got a little tears in my eyes a little bit, because that's a great story about Bernie and the fact that everyone was there cheering him on. Because I can imagine, 86 years old, everyone's hooting and hollering for him, giving him his credentials and giving him a good pat on the back. That's amazing to hear. Thank you for sharing that story as well, because that's cool what you guys are doing down there. One final question though: do you think that you'll ever be acknowledged or brought back as a guest? They have anniversary shows all the time for the WWE. Do you think that it actually ever bring you back and try to fix the last time we saw you, or you don't think you'll ever come back, or have you ever received a phone call about coming back as well?
I actually have, just as an idea, and would I be opposed to Royal Rumble? And realistically, my response is I can never be Muhammad Hassan again. I am the director of human resources in the Fulton City School District. I can't go out there, especially after all the controversy that character got. I can't go out there and do something that could be deemed offensive or insensitive towards a group of people. Then I wouldn't want to do that. I would not want to put myself in the position or make anybody feel like they're being disrespected. And for that reason, I don't think I ever will. I don't think they want Mark Capani to come out there. They wouldn't want Muhammad Hassan to come out there. And I am no longer Muhammad Hassan, and I have no intention of ever returning to that character again.
Smart decision. Get a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things going on. You don't want the New York Times writing an article about this guy has come out of the woodwork. But man, Mark, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. I remember at WrestleCon when I walked in, I swear there was like a beam of light hit you. I was like, holy, that is Muhammad Hassan. Like, what is he doing here? Because I you rarely see you out in the open or do interviews. So when I saw you, I thought, let's shoot my shot. Let's ask a question. Let's see if we can get this interview going. And here we are. That was April. Here we are in July. We did it. We accomplished it. And I got to say, thank you so much for sharing your passion with what you do now and the craziness surrounding your amazing character that will forever be talked about in good or bad light. But all in all, thank you so much for being here on 10 Count. I'm C. Fall. He is the head of human resources. Don't talk about what he did before. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.